our office. So here we go. Okay, please, the floor is back to you again. I'm sorry.
I will share my presentation. I hope that it will do. Yes. Everyone is seeing my presentation now?
Yes.
Okay, that's nice. I will, okay, now it's better? Okay. Yes, I shall try to give in great lines what we are doing in the Netherlands in VCU testing. So later on we can find what you are especially interested in, but I will give more general headlines. In the Netherlands, we are doing VCU testing of agricultural crops and not of horticultural crops. So crops like onions and carrots are not investigated in VCU testing. And that is because the Netherlands is a member of the EU, the European Union. And in the European Union, it is prescribed that for agricultural crops, VCU testing should be done before a variety is entering the national list. So to make clear what's going on in the Netherlands, I have made this overview. When a breeder has a new variety, he would like to have plant breeders' rights on this variety. He would like to have the variety on the national list, because the national list, you have to be on the national list with your variety to make it possible that the seed is certificated and trade of seed is possible in the Netherlands and also in the EU. So the national list, that is the list which is composed after 2 years of research, and it is composed by the Board for Plant Varieties. So the new variety is first is checked in 3 points. First, the name is of course checked. It should be unique. The DUS testing is done during 2 years, and after the DUS testing, positive results about identity could be made. When this is clear, then it's possible to have plant breeders' rights. So, and the breeder can get royalties on this variety. But next to this, also VCU testing is done. And before entering the national list, it is needed to do during 2 years VCU testing in the Netherlands on several locations. And then when the results are satisfactory, so the levels are not so high as for the recommended list, when the results are good enough for entering the national list, then the variety is coming on the national list and trading of seed is possible. But in the Netherlands, for the agricultural crops, the recommended list is much more important for the farmers and for the processing industry and the consumer. So after the 2 years of testing in VCU, we are continuing with the good varieties in the 3rd year. And after the 3rd year, the variety can come onto the recommended list. And the recommended list is not only used by the farmer and the processing industry and the consumer, but also by the breeder. Because when a new variety is on the recommended list, the breeder is using this recommended list for selling the variety to the farmers. So it's a kind of promoting his variety, because the VCU testing in the Netherlands is done in a way that the breeders are believing that it is independent and it will give good advice to the users of the varieties. Now, in short, some most important things for VCU testing. The aim is, of course, to select the best varieties for the farmer. The variety should be good in yield, in disease resistance, in quality characteristics. But not only the farmer is interested, also the processing industry. We have, for example, the sugar industry, the sugar production factories. and they would like to have the best varieties, the highest yield, high sugar content, and so on. And also the consumer is interested. For instance, with potatoes, the taste of the potatoes should be good. So also the consumer is involved. One other characteristic of VCU is that we have to publish independent and reliable information about variety performance.
Mr. Lubbock, I want to interfere, but because I think you have to start sharing again because the slides are not moving. So what I suggest is you stop sharing and you start sharing again and select another window because I think there's a problem there.
Okay. Yeah.
And then you go to share and you need to select really the one that is your PowerPoint program.
Yes.
Yeah,
This
and
one?
can you move to the next slide, please?
Yeah. And now it can be seen by everyone. Okay. Now, and not only it's important to publish about the varieties, but it's also important to give advice about how varieties are reacting on the different growing conditions. So in the variety list and also in the agricultural press, we are giving information how susceptible the varieties are under certain conditions, under dry conditions or under other conditions which are typical for certain regions in the Netherlands. So it's not that one variety is good all over the Netherlands, but under certain conditions, you need other varieties than under other conditions. So we are trying to provide the farmer information in a way that he can choose the best varieties for his specific conditions. And another point of VCU testing is also we are also translating the demands of the farmer to the breeders. So the breeders are stimulated to breed the correct varieties which are needed by the Dutch farmers. We are doing the variety trials under farmers' conditions. That's very important in the Netherlands because we would like to predict the value of the varieties in yield and in susceptibility for diseases, for example, under the farmers' conditions, because only then we can give a good advice to the farmer. So the planting, sowing, fertilization, disease control is more or less at the same level as an average farmer in the Netherlands is doing. And all the varieties should be tested under the same conditions. And another big important point is that it is needed to test the varieties during several years. So it takes 2 years before entering the national list, and it takes 3 years before entering the recommended list. So we are looking at the mean values, the mean performance over the last 3 years. And we are not deciding on 1 year or on one location. So it's also in 1 year, it is needed to test the varieties on more than one location. And it depends on the crop, how many locations. I come to it later on. So that's an important point. I understand that you are also interested how the VCU testing is paid in the Netherlands. It was a change during the last 20, 30 years. Before 1990, it was completely paid by the government. So the government was testing the varieties for the recommended list and also for the national list, and the breeders and the processing industry and the farmers didn't pay anything. But since 1997, it was completely changed in a way that the VCU testing is paid by the stakeholders. So the breeders are paying for the variety, for the VCU testing, but also the processing industry and also the farmers. And some for the most important crops, the main crops, the VCU is centrally organized. So the stakeholders have formed a group, a working group, and the working group is organizing the VCU testing, and in a way that they are making a protocol, and several research institutes can be asked to give an offer for doing the VCU testing for a certain amount of money, and then all the stakeholders are paying for the VCU testing. But for the small crops, which are new or very small in the Netherlands, this is not done centrally by all the stakeholders. But for the small crops, it's possible that a breeder is conducting VCU testing for placing a new variety on the national list. But this is only for making certification of seed possible and making the trade of.
Is mess up for me.
Now here you have an overview of the crops we are testing in the Netherlands. I realize that it can be totally different from Bulgaria, of course, but it gives me, maybe it gives an impression. So in sugar beet, we are testing the varieties on 5 trials per year. And after 2 years of testing, the variety can be placed on the national list. And after 3 years of testing, it will be placed on the recommended list. And in general, you can say that only 10 or 15% of the new varieties which are applicated in the first year are really entering the recommended list. So during the VCU testing, there is a very strong selection that only the very good varieties are really entering the recommended list. So, and here you see the number of varieties which we are testing every year. And you can see that the maize for silage, because we have a lot of cows in the Netherlands, and we are feeding the cows with maize silage, and there are a lot of varieties which are tested for this purpose, but also maize for grain. Cereals are tested. We are testing winter wheat in the Netherlands on 6 locations. And we are doing also some special tests, for example, for fusarium resistance or baking quality measurements. And so this is going on. And here we have another point. In potatoes, we have only a national list, and there is no recommended list. For in the potatoes, the stakeholders had decided there is no need for a recommended list, and they are satisfied if the variety is on the national list, and the potatoes can be sold, the varieties can be sold, and they don't like it to have a recommended list. But all the other crops, recommended list is common. Now, to give an example of how the testing is done in the Netherlands, you can see that, for example, in winter wheat, we have trials, yield trials, so with relatively large plots on which the yield can be measured in a good way, and we are doing it on 6 locations in 3 regions. We have even in the Netherlands, which is a small country. We have different types of clay soil, in the northern clay soil, central clay soil, and southwestern clay soil. And in each region, we have 2 locations. And on each location, we have one trial with disease control. So 2 or 3 times in the season, the diseases are the fungicides are given to destroy the disease attack. And there is also a trial without disease control. So in this trial, we can see what is happening with varieties when no disease control is applied. And then we have some special tests because some diseases are not occurring every year. And in that way, we are using trials with inoculation of Fusarium, for example. But sometimes we are, for mildew, we are showing these trials on the special conditions and no infection, no artificial infection is needed. And we can score the differences between the varieties in mildew resistance. Bread making quality is also measured on the samples which are obtained from the variety trials with disease control, because that are the trials which are grown in a way that is comparable with the way a farmer is growing the varieties. Now you can see here that in winter wheat we have about 50 varieties in testing every year, and you can see here already the strong selection from one year to the other year. In most years, about 25 varieties are starting in the first year, and only half of these varieties are going into the second year, and again into the third year. It's again the half of the number of varieties is going through, and at the end only 2 or 3 varieties are entering really the recommended list. And the varieties, the new varieties, are tested against the already recommended varieties. So when a variety is on the recommended list, it is still tested during the years after coming on the recommended list, because for the Dutch farmer, it's needed to give every year the newest information about the varieties, because sometimes a variety can become susceptible for a disease like a rust, yellow rust, for example. And when the disease resistance is broken down, the farmer should know this immediately. So every year, a new recommended list is made, and the results of the already recommended varieties are updated every year. An important point for variety testing is that all varieties should be tested in the same way. So we are asking for untreated seed, and the seed is treated by the institute which is doing the variety testing. So to be sure that every variety is treated in the same way. And also the minimum germination should be at least 85%. To be sure that we are really finding differences, genetic differences between the varieties, and not differences which are confused by seed quality. Now here an overview of the characteristics. Now grain yield is of course an important point for the farmers. Lodging resistance, because in the Netherlands we have sometimes very heavy rainfall, especially during the last years with climate change. The rainfall is becoming heavier, and the demands for varieties with a high level of lodging resistance is growing. Disease resistance is important, and also the disease resistance during the years. So it can change from one year to another year. Earliness is important. Bread making quality, resistance to sprouting in the ear. That say when the crop is staying in the field too long, then some varieties are sprouting already in the ear, and other varieties are not doing this. Winter hardness is mentioned here, but the winters are becoming less hard than in the past. So winter hardness cannot be measured anymore so strong as in the past. An important point, as I've said, is that we would like to find really differences, genetic differences between the varieties, and these differences can be disturbed by the quality of the seed, and also of the seed potatoes especially. And especially in potato variety testing, it's very important to look at the fact that all varieties should be tested in a way that the seed potatoes are more or less in the same conditions. So they should be healthy. And the size of the seed tubers should be more or less the same for all varieties. And also the physiological states of the seed tubers should be the same for all varieties, because when there are differences in these points, then you don't find only true genetic differences between varieties, but also differences which are caused by the physiological states of the seed tubers or the size of the seed tubers. Here you see, for example, a point that it is known that when increasing size of tubers, the number of stems will be going up. So when some varieties are tested with seed tubers with this size, it will give another result than another variety which is grown from seed tubers with this size. So that will give a confusion of the real genetic differences, because both varieties can be grown from the same seed tuber size. Another important point of VCU testing is that we have to look for very homogeneous fields to have good trials, because variation within the field can destroy the trial field in a way that the trial field is becoming very heterogeneous and we cannot find real differences between the varieties. So we are using block designs or even alpha designs to make sure that we can make corrections for the heterogeneity in the field. So in most crops in winter wheat, we are using 2 replications. That is rather, the number of 2 is low, and that's because of the short of money, and breeders and users don't like it to pay more for VCU testing. In the past, it was 3 replications or even more, but we can do it as best as we can. And we can do this also because we are looking for homogeneous fields, so or parts of the fields which are homogeneous. Now here it's another illustration of we are looking for homogeneous fields, and then we are looking for if there are soil diseases present, especially for sugar beet and potatoes, for example. So it should be free from soil diseases. The draining or the water supply in the soil should be homogeneous over the field. There should be no influence of trees or high buildings. Also in the previous years, the field should be treated in a way that the field was homogeneous to have a good trial. Also, it's a point that on our trial fields, we have to lay down a trial in a way that the heterogeneity is corrected in the right way. So, for example, when we have tracks with machines which is going from this direction, we cannot do a trial in this way because this plot will have a bad influence of the track, and this plot didn't have it. And when you are showing the plots in this way, while the tracks are this way, then all plots have the same influence of this track. Sometimes there is also influence of between plots and within a variety trial. For example, here you see a variety which is attacked severely by yellow rust. Sometimes you see that the varieties which are growing next to this plot are also becoming more susceptible than when a variety is growing next to a resistant variety. Also in lodging, you can sometimes have problems that when one variety is lodging very severely, it can also have a lodging effect on the border, on the neighboring plots. In maize, we have sometimes the problem that we have always the problem that we have to deal with short varieties and tall varieties, and that's the reason that we are testing varieties on plots which consist of 6 rows, and the distance between the rows is 75 centimeters. And we have the experience that when you have 6 rows, and then you can only harvest the 2 rows in the middle, because there are tall varieties and small varieties in the trials. Here you see an example of a small variety which is growing next to tall varieties, and we have measured that when you are doing you are harvesting the row by row, then you can see when the relative yield is 100% for row 2 and 3. You see that in rows 1 and row 6, the yield level is 15% higher, 10 or 15%. But even in row 2 and 5, you are also losing yield because the small variety is competed by the tall variety. After we have harvested the trial fields, we are doing a lot of statistical evaluation of the trials, and yeah, we are looking at the variation within the data. Coefficient of variation is an important point, but also the residues, which plots has higher residues. Sometimes there can be a reason for deviating results. And during the growing season, we are doing observations to find out if there are irregular incidents in the trial. Sometimes it can become dry, and then you see that some parts of the fields are becoming more dry than other parts. Sometimes it's possible to reject a plot because it is deviating, not because of the quality of the variety, but because of the spot in the field. But you have to do it based on observations during the growing period. It's not possible to reject plots after harvest only because they are disappointing. Now the recommendation of varieties is done based on the index value. There's a combination of characteristics, and each characteristic has its own weight. So sometimes yield is as a high weight, and earliness as a lower weight. And positive contributions to the index are, of course, the positive varieties in these characteristics. For sometimes there are minimum criteria for characteristics. For example, diseases. We are saying the variety should not be lower than a 6 in figures, in school figures. When the variety is lower, then the variety is rejected, even when the variety is good in yield, because we don't like it that farmers are growing very susceptible varieties. All varieties are expressed in an average value against the average value of the standard varieties. So we give relative values. The standard varieties, the recommended varieties, are put at 100, And when the new variety is entering the recommended list, the value should be higher than 100. So it's 100 or even higher. Now here an example of interaction between the regions. Here you see 4 clay soils, and here you see a sandy and peat soil, and especially this variety, which is more or less even good as the other two. This variety is very good on the sandy soils, while it is disappointing on the clay soils, because this variety has a good resistance to mildew, the disease which is occurring more on the sandy soils than on the clay soil. It depends on the crop if we are giving recommendations per region in yield. In sugar beet, we are not making differences between the different regions in the Netherlands, but in winter wheat, it is needed to present yield results per region, because the varieties can react differently between the regions. Now here a short illustration what we are doing in VCU testing of silage maize. In silage maize, we have a lot of trials. We have 7 trials for each earliness group. So the varieties are split up in early group, a late group, because it is not possible to have all these varieties in one trial, because the trial should be harvested at one moment. And when early varieties and late varieties are in the same trial, then we are harvesting the early variety too late and the late variety too early. And we are doing observations about, of course, on diseases and on quality. So that's in great line. I don't know if this is what you are needing, but in the discussion we can see what's more interesting for you. But so I hope it will give a first view of what we are doing in the Netherlands.
Okay, thank you very much. What I would like to suggest, I've been checking with some of my colleagues, that we first run a round of more technical questions to Lubbert, if you have any questions. So if you have a clear question, I think you can go to the either use raise your hand using the tools of Zoom. So then I can give you the word. I think it's easiest if you just explain your word, your questions to Lubbert yourself. So who has a direct question to him? Okay, I see already Shehu Abdo. Maybe you can, if you can, put on your camera and your unmute, and then you can raise your question to him. Okay. Thank you, please go ahead, sir.
Thank you very much. My question is on the number of years taken for fodder grass. Why is it more in the case of fodder grass for both the VCU and the DUS?
In fodder grass, the fodder grass in the Netherlands is perennial ryegrass most. And this crop is growing during more than 1 year. So it is sown in the first year, and then the fodder grass is staying in the field over winter, and then even till 3 or 4 years. So we have to look also at the results in the trials after in the 3rd and in the 4th year after sowing. So that's the reason that before entering the national list or the recommended list, it takes more years of testing, because all the other crops are annual crops. That's what you are meaning?
Is it
Thank you.
does it respond to your question, please?
It's okay, yes.
Okay, thank
Okay.
you. I have a question under Efinix Note 5. I don't have a name there, so please introduce yourself and then share your question. Please go ahead. Please unmute yourself. Yes, here you go. Please, the floor is yours.
I want to know the components of the selection index, because in the course of your evaluation, you never brought in the G/E analysis. So I don't know what are the components that we use to select the final selection. Then
Yes,
in the early stage of selection or of trial, you said that when your results are good enough, how good must they be before you proceed?
now I shall try to explain. We are not calculating an index value per trial. We are, for instance, in winter wheat, we are analyzing the yield data of all the trials. We are calculating the mean. I can try to. I have it on my. You can. I can illustrate it here. For yield, we are doing first the analysis of the yield data in a trial field. Then we are calculating the mean yield in the typical year for a region, and then we are calculating the average yield over the last 4 years. And the mean yield over the last 4 years is put in the index, and also the mean value for lodging resistance is put in the index with a certain weight, and also the disease resistance is calculated in mean value over the yield over the years, and then we are using an index. My mouse is oh yeah, here.
Are you true?
In the index, we have grain yield. That's the mean grain yield over the last 4 years of all trials, which are of all correct harvested trials. And then the variety is also getting a value for bread making quality, also measured over the years. And for grain yield, the weighted factor is maybe 4, and for bread making quality it's 3, and it's in this way we are calculating a total index value. That's okay. What you are meaning, or is it another subject?
Okay, but when you look at the yields over the 4 years,
yes,
you know that they will not be stable. They'll be varying from year to year.
Yeah,
that.
I think that it is in the Netherlands. We have seen. Now, let's say I will say it in this way. Also, for the farmer, he has to deal with different years, and we would like to find varieties which are, on average, over the years, of a good value. So that's the reason that we are calculating the mean yield over the years. And I agree, when you have very extreme years, for example, a very dry year and a very wet year, then sometimes you are coming in the position that it is not possible to calculate the mean value over these years. And in the Netherlands, until now, we have relatively no big differences between the years, but it is changing because of climate change. Also in the Netherlands, we see nowadays that we have dry years and we have wet years. In the past, the situation was more equal. So we had more or less the same growing conditions in the different years. And the differences between the years are becoming bigger in the Netherlands. And I expect, I've never been in Nigeria, but I've been in other countries. I can expect that in your countries, maybe the differences are even bigger. And it depends also on the situation. Is it possible to have irrigation on the farm or not? Or the level of fertilization is also important. So I think for some VCU testing, it is not correct to present only mean values over the years. In some countries and in some regions, it can be even more interesting for farmers to also see the stability of the yield data. And then you have to present the yield differences per year, for example. And then the farmer is knowing, so 2 years ago it was a dry year, and then was this variety was the best one, and in the more wet year another variety is the best one. But even then, for the farmer, it's difficult to know what's going on in the next year. But he knows his fields, and sometimes he can expect on one field more wet conditions than on another field. So I think we cannot say that it's always the correct way to present only average values over the years. You have to look at this problem in each situation.
Okay, let us leave that alone. Then in your selection index, did you weight the components equally?
Sorry?
Hello? Did you weight the components equally?
Sorry, I didn't understand it. So can
Did you give the same weight to the components?
No, the components don't have the same weight. It is depending on the importance of the characteristic for the farmer. When the farmer is paid very strongly on grain yield and only in a very less way for bread making quality, then grain yield will have a high weighting factor, and bread making quality a low one.
It's okay.
Okay, good. Thank you very much. Are there any other questions? Any other persons who'd like to have a question? In the meantime, while people think of a question, Francis requested in the chat whether the presentation can be made available to the participant. Is that possible, Lubert?
Yes, it's possible. I can send.
Fantastic.
I can send a PDF of
that's
the
good.
presentation to everyone when I have the email addresses. So.
What we will do, we'll send it to Chinedu, our program manager, and he will make sure that all the participants who are present today will get the PDF.
Okay.
Yeah? Well, is there anybody else having a technical question to Lubert on his presentation? And I think please feel free, because I think this is really a chance for you to ask questions to, as you noticed, he knows very much in detail how the system works in the Netherlands, and many of you are involved in the same system, but in Nigeria, it's really an opportunity. So feel free, if you have very technical questions, go ahead.
Yeah, if I may come in.
Please, Dr. Aladele. Then after that, I will give the floor to Mr. Solomon.
Yeah.
Please go ahead, sir.
I want to find out in the Netherlands for the VCU testing, what is the minimum trial site that is acceptable? I know it could be as many as possible depending on the crops and the the breeders, but what is the minimum acceptable standard before a variety is allowed even to go into the variety listing? Thank you.
You mean what is the minimum number of variety? No, the minimum
location.
size of
you know, you said it must be more than one location, and it must be more than 1 year. What is the minimum acceptable? 5, 2, or 3?
So how many locations in the Netherlands and from how many years? You have a slide also. So how many locations to get also this adaptation? Do you select, how many locations you need to get the material?
Yeah, I can. This slide is illustrating it more or less. Yeah, that's a rather difficult question, but the number of trials you are needing per year is depending on how many different regions you can distinguish in your country. When you have, for example, in winter wheat, there is an interaction in the Netherlands between northern clay and southwestern clay. That's clear. And for each region, you should present reliable results. And our minimum per region is that we would like to have two trials in a region. One trial. Yeah, we don't believe that it is correct to present yield data in the variety list, which are based on one location in a region.
So let me try to assist in. So we can distinguish, even though Netherlands is a very tiny country compared to Nigeria, we have two different agricologies for a crop. Yeah.
Yeah.
And if you, in that case, you said for winter wheat it was, so you basically define agricology and then at least 2 locations you need trials to present. Is that the case, Lubert?
Yes, more or less.
That is common for, so for each crop you have different regions. Yeah. And then if there's really a different agricological or a different production system, you have at least 2 locations where the test. Yeah. How many years is also indicated? Several.
For giving a good recommendation, you need at least 3 years.
Yeah.
So, okay. But that's also depending on the fluctuations between the years. When you have very contrasting years, you need more years.
Okay.
Or you have to present the data per year that the farmer can see the stability of the varieties.
Okay, yeah. Does that respond to your question, Dr. Alalele?
Yeah, thank you very much. Yeah.
I think you can already try to translate that to Nigerian reality.
Yeah, thank you.
Do you have another question?
No, I'm okay.
Okay, so let's move to Solomon, please. Solomon, the floor is yours.
Yeah, thank you very much. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you well.
Okay, thank you. I work on sweet potato, and that represents a lot, almost the same for all root and tuber crops. And then, so I was curious when he was presenting and talked about potato. And I want to know, like in Nigeria, I mean, for a crop like sweet potato that has very large G/E for almost all the important traits. So we have to, we do our trials in many, in all the agroecologies, okay, and then and minimum of 2 years. And so I want to ask, what was your experience with potato in the Netherlands? So I want to see if I want to know if we can if we are almost doing the same thing, or we can learn from one system compared to the other. In yam, in cassava, in Nigeria, we have to, because Nigeria is a very huge country, and we have many agroecologies that are quite different from one another. So, so you want to test your materials in a lot of locations, agroecologists, and then you want to also do minimum of 2 years. And that has been working, but can we use the system in your place to compare with what is happening in Nigeria when we look at a potato that falls within the vegetatively propagated crop that we have in Nigeria? Thank you.
Yes, in potato testing, I know that when you would measure the yield differences between potato varieties, when you compare it with other crops, I think the interactions and the susceptibility of potatoes to environmental conditions are much heavier than in sugar beet, for instance. So in potatoes, I think when you say 3 years of testing is enough in sugar beet, I expect that for giving reliable results, you need even 4 or 5 years for potatoes, because potatoes are very reacting on differences in fertilization or in a moment of planting and that kind of things, more than other crops.
Okay.
Yeah. Is that also the case for sweet potato, you believe? Or
actually,
yeah, we are not testing varieties for seed potato production.
Sweet potato, yeah.
Sweet potato, sorry. No, sweet potato, yes.
So what do you think, Solomon? Is that also applicable to sweet potato, that are also very responsive to that, or is it different?
Yeah, I mean, for sweet potato, it's the same. But you know, when we're talking about vegetatively propagated crops, and then in Nigeria we don't use slips. We actually use the vines. You know, so and with that you could actually make a lot of materials, that your planting materials kind of homogeneous if you are very careful about how you plan your trial. And so then when you look at the environment, where you testing your materials, like I said, you have the savanna region, you have the rainforest region, you have the high rainforest region, and transition ecology, and so many variation in a lot of places you could test your materials. But for the fact that you are doing a vegetatively propagated crop, so we actually report location. You have to do location by location reporting, agroecology, because you can't just easily pull them. You want to show the reactions in those locations, and at the same time also you want to see the combined analysis across locations, over years and over locations, and so you want to do minimum of 2 years, variety release testing, and also you still have the on-farm with farmers. So when you pull all of those together, then it gives you, a result that you can rely on for variety release.
Okay, thank you very much.
My pleasure.
Any final question to Lubbert at this moment? After that, I want to give the floor to the chair, the Prof, to share. I had one question coming also to say, can you explain, Lubbert, how many seasons we have in the Netherlands for field crops? Because in Nigeria they have different seasons.
Yes. In the Netherlands we have the summer season. So every year we have only one growing season, and that's totally different from Nigeria.
So that means it goes a little bit slower. We come to different seasons. Any other question coming? No. Then basically, what is nice, I will like to give the floor to Prof. Olufajo. And then also we basically also for him quickly to share. I think almost everybody in the room knows the system in Nigeria, but is the setup of today. So let's talk a little bit about, Prof, please can you share also how it is? And in your presentation also, I hope that you can reflect a little bit how that compares with the system at the Netherlands at the moment.
Thank you very much. I now share my
screen. Yes. We are good. Thank you so much. The floor is yours.
Oh, thank you. What I intend to do actually is to just give the overall in terms of the general situation in Nigeria, not be specific on any crop. And that is the approach I am taking. And in terms of introduction, as you are aware, every country has a pathway for commercialization. And this is to ensure that adapted, credible, and best varieties are introduced to the public for general cultivation. Also to ensure that varieties that are released to farmers have no harmful effect on the consumer and the environment at large. Also, we intend to give farmers opportunity to choose varieties of interest for cultivation in a particular region where the variety is adapted. But above all, we want to ensure the availability of sufficient seed of these preferred varieties. So in Nigeria, we have what we term the requirement of variety release. And basically, for all crops, and I will come to the exceptions later, you need on-station trials for 2 years or seasons to determine the DUS. Then coming to the National Performance Trial or VCU, which we actually call multi-locational trials in Nigeria. That has to be done also for 2 years minimum, and also or 2 seasons. And we insist that the minimum number of sites should be 10 per year or season for each trial, and it has to be in different ecologies or the ecology that the breeder is targeting. And because you know Nigeria is a big country, and you have the Sudano-Sahelian zone, you have the northern and southern Guinea savanna that is big. Varieties can be released for that. Varieties also can be released for rainforest and also mid-altitude and so on and so forth. And you can have varieties that perform across the different ecologies. So we also put that in mind. But in all cases, the minimum number of sites should be 10. Also, we have the second layer when it comes to VCU that we call on-farm testing. And this is, in fact, what we consider as most critical, because the farmers have to accept the variety even after going through the VCU, and you have streamlined your variety, and you now want to release. Then the farmers have to approve before the varieties can be released. And we also have that in place, that on-farm participatory testing of variety should be done in no less than 10 sites across the ecology, agroecology, where the variety is intended to be released. But I want us to note that in case of on-station and multi-location trial, in some cases, this can be done simultaneously in during the first 2 years. It can be done. It can the two can be done simultaneously in some cases. Also, the on-farm trial can be done simultaneously with multi-location trial during the second year of multi-location trial. So the scenario that I've talked about now in terms of process is actually for all crops, whether it's the cereal crop, legumes, or vegetable, they have to go through a similar process. But when you come to perennial or long gestation crop, then there's a bit of a shift in the sense that the national performance trial and the on-farm trial can be combined through a farmer participatory variety selection effort that can be done for those perennial crops. That is the only exception in Nigeria for now. Now, who can develop a new crop variety for registration and release? And at present, all registered organizations in the country can develop and release or register and release variety. And these organizations have been categorized into different groups. You have the National Agricultural Research Institute that are in Nigeria, the NARIs, the universities in Nigeria. Then you have the consultative group on international agricultural research centers. But these ones, they have to release in collaboration with the research institutes and the universities that are in Nigeria. On their own, they cannot. But when they work in collaboration with the institutes and universities, then they can release variety. Private seed companies can also release variety. Non-governmental organizations can release. And private breeders, especially with the PVP Act that is on and that is now operating. Once a breeder is registered, he can release variety. We have in place in Nigeria is the research mandate, because all crops that are cultivated in the country have their coordinating research institute. Coordinating research institute is to, because they are the ones that have mandate on genetic improvement of this of the crop. If take, for example, rice, only the National Cereal Research Institute has the mandate for genetic improvement of rice. Vegetables and fruits, the only National Cultural Research Institute based in Ibadan has the genetic mandate for their genetic improvement. When it comes to maize, two institutes have genetic mandate for genetic improvement. Institute for Agricultural Research based in Cameroon area, and the Institute of Agricultural Research and Training based in Ibadan. So we have one institute in the northern part of the country, another in the southern part of the country, having mandate for genetic improvement of maize. And I think it's only maize that I know for now that two institutes are having genetic mandate for genetic improvement. Now there's also a national coordinator for each crop. And the national coordinator is based in the Coordinating Research Institute for that specific crop. If a new variety is developed by any other organization apart from the organization that is having genetic mandate for that crop, then the developing organization, whether it is a seed company or an NGO, we have to work harmoniously with the Coordinating Research institute to evaluate that writing. Also, if that variety is going for nomination for release, the document for release for that material has to pass through the relevant coordinating research system. This ensures that there is coordination within the country. And there's a reason for this. In order to ensure that there are checks and balances within the system, and that if there's any infraction, to know who to hold responsible, these government institutions have been given this mandate, so that they are the ones that will be the first port of call. If they know about this, then they'll be able to tell and direct whoever is concerned appropriately. So this is just a sort of regulatory system that has been put in place in the country. Now, coming back to the VCU, who is responsible for the conduct of the VCU, or what we call FPT in the country? For any crop, if there's a new crop that is being developed by an institute that is having genetic mandate for coordinating that for that crop, that institute will conduct the national performance test. So the responsibility of that institute to perform that function. But if a seed company or NGO is having a new variety that it wants to release, they will have to give the institution that is coordinating research institute will be the one that will conduct the national performance trial. But I must add that that trial has to be done in collaboration with the organization that is proposing that material for release. So that intent to propose the material for release. Once it is not a public institution, it has to go through that coordinating research institute that has mandate for that particular crop. Now, coming to on-farm trial, the situation is a bit different. The on-farm trials, they are conducted by farmers in their field. So it's farmers that actually conduct trials. But these trials are supervised by appropriate government extension organizations. And we have them in every state. For example, we have the Agricultural Development Project. And also we have the local government, every local government, we have the Department of Agriculture for that local government. And these agencies, they have well-trained extension staff that can supervise farmers as we conduct the on-farm test. In addition, we have projects like IFAD, they sponsor the climate change project, and so on and so forth, that are capable of having of conducting and supervising the farmers, because they are well-trained extension agents that can perform this function. But most add that these trials are monitored by the relevant coordinating research institution. And so this coordinating research institutions perform this oversight function of monitoring the trials. And in most cases, this coordinating research institution that put the packages for these trials together and also direct them on what to do and even train the extension personnel who eventually train farmers on what to do. They provide the protocol in this trial, so they know exactly what to do. And when these on-farm trials are being, the representatives of the technical subcommittee of the variety release committee, they visit the on-farm trials to ensure that things are being done properly and also document farmers' perspective on the proposed new varieties. So these functions are also played by the technical committee. I must say that originally the responsibility for the conduct of on-farm was vested on crop centers. This is more or less an independent body. And these centers are based in different parts of the country. You have, for example, the rice maize center based in Mock Plantation, the Center for Root Crops based in Idike in the east. Then in Zaria, we have the Sorghum Millet Center. And in Maiduguri, which is in the northeast, we have the Millet Wheat Center. But over the years, we discovered that these centers are not well funded. And the role that was assigned to them, they couldn't play this role effectively. The logistics they don't have, most of the time they don't have the vehicles to move around, and they don't have the personnel able to perform this function. And so it became very difficult for them to fit into the system, because what was expected at that time was that once a breeder or the coordinating research institute, once they perform the multiplication trial, their own job to just hand over to this center that will perform the on-farm trial. And then they will give the verdict eventually on whether the material is acceptable or not. So that was what was originally planned. But this did not work because of the lack of funding. And that was why this responsibility was eventually given. Can you hear me? You are hearing me? Okay.
Prof, please try to move towards an end, please. You have still some time, but please.
Okay. So that was why the responsibility was given to them. Now, why do we conduct on-farm trials? Well, we do this to obtain the perception of farmers about the candidate variety. We want to know whether the varieties they are adapted to farmers' condition, and also to discover the VCU in collaboration with farmers, because farmers actually know a lot about what they want, and it's their view that is final. And so we try to do this along with them. Now, coming to analysis, data analysis, who does the analysis? For the MPT and on-farm, is the coordinating research that do the analysis, but they do it in collaboration with the developing or nominating organization, that is either a seed company or the NGO. They work harmoniously together. Also, the preparation of documents for variety release is done by all these coordinating research in collaboration with the developing or nominating organization. But then, as I said, they have to work harmoniously with the private companies that are releasing them, particularly when they have breeders too. So they know how they work and how the things go. There's no problem and things are moving well in that respect. I won't go into the details of the analysis because we already know the type of analysis that we do. Now, the costing, who bears the cost of the trial? Yeah. Any organization that is producing the material will bear the cost of both the MPT and the company. If it's the nominating, if it is the coordinating organization, the organization will bear it. Also, if it is the private company, the private company will bear the cost. This is an area that we are working on in terms of how to make it better, how to harmonize. It's an ongoing process, and I believe that we'll be able to arrive at something that is acceptable to all the stakeholders that are involved in this area. And I think I would like to stop here for now. I say thank you very much for your attention. Thank you.
Wonderful, Prof. Thank you very much for the explanation. I think it's really interesting to see the differences between the system in Nigeria and Netherlands. I first want to give the floor to Lubbert if he has any question to you, any curiosity, what kind of big differences Lubbert sees between the system he presented himself and the one presented now by Prof. And then maybe ask also the floor, because many of the people in the room, they know the two systems. Well, they know the Nigerian system, so let's focus a bit on the differences.
Yes, I see that in Nigeria there is made a difference between NPT trials and on-farm trials. And NPT trials, I assume that they are the VCU trials, so the trials which are done by the research institutes. In the Netherlands, we don't have this difference between on-farm trials and NPT trials. I think our trials are comparable with your NPT trials, and we do not have on-farm trials in the way. I don't know exactly what is done on the on-farm trials. What's the difference what is the difference between NPT and on-farm trial? We have in the Netherlands, we are doing the NPT trial sometimes on farms. And then the farmers are also looking at the data, they are looking at the trial itself, they are looking at the varieties. Sometimes the farmers are also involved in the discussions in the working group, how the index must be set, what is the weighting factor for yield and for disease resistance. So the farmer in the Netherlands, we are trying to involve the farmer, not especially in his own field, but especially on our trials. Mm-hmm. And we are doing the trials on the farms sometimes, but also sometimes on the field of the research station. But I don't see so much difference in the Netherlands between the field of a research station and the farmers' fields. Mm-hmm. So these differences are not so big. And also the breeder is involved. Sometimes in the Netherlands, a breeder is doing one of the NPT trials under a protocol, and the result, for example, in winter wheat, we have 6 locations where we have NPT trials, and 2 of them are done by a breeder, and he's doing this according to the same protocol as we have for the other trials. And sometimes one of the research workers of the institute is visiting this trial and is also doing observations. And we are comparing these observations between the breeder and research worker. And there's a lot of cooperation also in the Netherlands. But this clear distinction between on-farm trials and NPT trials, we do not have so.
Prof, maybe can you respond to this question and also comments by Lubbert, please?
Yeah, thank you very much. What the two trials, the NPT and the on-farm, they are different. The NPT is basically researcher managed, and it has many, it can have many varieties. Many in the sense that, you know, they could be 15, they could be 20, they could be 12, you know, whatever number that the scientists can put into it. So it's from the NPT that you now come out with one or two or maximum 3 varieties that you think are stable, I mean, they are adaptable, and you have it across location in terms of performance. You come out the best that the researcher thought, they now think that these are the ones that I want to release. And when you come with those 2 or 3, then you now move those ones to on-farm that will be tested by the farmer. And in most cases, the on-farm, you have either only 3 varieties, or maximum 4. These varieties, they will include the check, which is the farmer check. You have the variety you are going to release. And also you have an improved variety, the one that the latest variety that you don't release. That the farmer will now be the one that will plant it from sowing to harvesting. The farmer will manage it completely, managed by a farmer, supervised by extension agent. The researcher has very little to do with it. The farmer will now give the verdict. This is how what I feel about this variety. This is my perception, and so on and so forth. That is the difference. Whereas for NPT, the farmer is not involved. Yes, the farmer could be taken there to make selection here and there. But when it comes to on-farm in Nigeria, the farmer is the custodian of it. You have to note that our farmers are not as educated in terms of Western education. They are just the way they are, but they know what they are doing. And if they believe in something, they use it. If they don't believe in it, they won't go near it. So you have to convince them that it is good before they can run for it. I think that's what you do.
Okay, thank you very much. I have another question from Solomon, please.
Thank you very much. Actually, not a question, it's more of comment.
Go ahead.
Yes. Yeah, thank you. I just see, I look at the two systems, and I try to see that in Nigeria, we actually rely more on the participatory varietal evaluation system, whereby the breeder has finished his work up to the and will also and will have conducted multi-locational trials to select the superior genotypes, and then goes into the NPT, which is still multi-locational trial again, but not handled by him. These are handled by independent assessors, but he's involved. And after that, then he makes selections and then goes on-farm on-farm. Most times, this is the level when farmers come into the selection process. But when you look at the Netherlands system, this is more like a participatory breeding, plant breeding, whereby the farmers are involved. They own the process. At times, the farmer groups even pay for the breeding process. And so a lot of activities, breeding, evaluation, happen on their farms, alongside with the breeder. So they work right from the go, and so the farmers already are involved in the selection process, even while a lot of variation are right there on the field, and so there is no need to do on-farm again. The on-farm is being done right as the breeding process goes on, and so. Like Prof said, I think it has to do with the two systems are not. I mean, they are conditioned by the level of the farmers involved. The Nigerian farmers actually okay. Okay.
I think there's another characteristic that I think we have to take into account, and it's a question I'm going to ask to Lubert. What kind of companies or public or private breeders do we have in the Netherlands for the crops you were talking about? Is this public breeders? Is this private breeders? Are these companies with their marketing department? Can you explain a little bit? Because that's a big difference with the people that we're talking here.
Yeah. In the Netherlands, only private breeding companies are making applications for new varieties. So there are no research stations who are applicating for new varieties.
There is no public breeding done, only breeding research.
Yeah.
Pre-breeding, that is only public. Yeah. All breeding in the Netherlands is done private. Yeah?
Yeah.
And can you explain maybe from your organization, is that a public organization or a private organization? As you organize this MPT, because that's very different also. There's another big difference. Can you explain a little bit about that?
Now, NAC Tuinbouw is a semi-public organization. So it's paid partly by the government and partly by, per variety amount of money is paid. But the research itself, and the VCU testing in the Netherlands, is performed by research organizations, which are private. There are private research organizations which have the task to do research, and they are paid for the research. And these private organizations are competing with each other. In a way which organization is doing the best work and which is the cheapest one, that kind of things. But the framework, according to protocols, is set by the government, because we have the VCU protocols. These VCU protocols, in these VCU protocols, the whole testing is described. The standards, which standards should be used, how large the plots are, how many replications, where the location should be done, which characteristics should be observed and in which way. And the research stations, the more or less commercial research stations, has to do their task according to that protocol, and the protocol is set every year formally in a new form every year by the Board for Plant Varieties, and this board is an organization which is belonging to the government, because the government is responsible for the national list in the Netherlands. So the list on which the varieties should be before certification of seed and selling of seed is allowed. So there is an official governmental influence on the way in which VCU testing is done. But this is every year, it is in discussion by everyone who is involved. So breeders are trying to introduce new ideas or new methods, and also farmers are discussing in these groups, and the branch organizations are also giving an input.
Yeah.
And at the end, a proposal is made for the board for plant varieties, and they are deciding is it correct or not. They are doing this. For the government, so they are the government is at the end responsible how the VCU testing is done.
So you see,
There's a strong influence.
yeah. I wanted to push a little bit to see the difference. So you have basically very strong private industry. The breeding is done only by private companies.
Yeah.
So that is also very distinct difference between Nigeria and the Netherlands. So you have then the regulatory bodies performing this. They organize it, but it's basically then, which is semi-public. Then you have private companies, research companies, who do the testing. Sometimes the testing is also done by the breeding companies. One of the tests, but that's in agreement. And like the testing, I know that there's a lot of discussions on these things, how to organize things in Nigeria. You heard now from the Netherlands. Also here, every year on specific topics, there's a lot of discussions about what kind of things involved. So that is part of the business. And that's a similarity. There's always lots of discussion. Even though the sector is very different. And also, let's say, the ones doing the testing, breeders do themselves the testing, but the overseeing is done by an independent body, given that authority by the government. And then basically the testing is done by accredited research stations who can do that work, and then the cheapest as possible. So it's not a kind of self-evaluation, it's an evaluation by others. Self-evaluation is also part of it. So I know that also we have this kind of discussions in Nigeria to move in certain directions there in the collaborative seed program. We are also trying to see, we can of course not copy this, but we go into directions to make the program of the structure of variety release and registration more efficient and more giving each public and private breeders also the similar share. We are moving towards, we are over time already, so I can give room for one final question or observation, or Prof wants to respond to my remarks maybe before I give the floor to Dr. Aladele for the closing words. Maybe I give the Prof some final words and maybe also Lubbert some final words. Before I give the floor back for the photo thanks. Prof.
Thank you very much. I think what I'd like to say is that it's good we are exchanging knowledge, we are interacting, and we're learning. We've learned so much about the Netherlands situation, and we are trying to compare and contrast. And I believe at the end of it all, I think this will get to improve. We adapt what we can adapt and see how we move forward. I think that's all I would like to say. I think it's all.
Okay. Thank you very much, Prof. I think that's also one of the intentions of the collaborative seed program, and that's why it's also part of what we call the Nigeria-Netherlands Seed Partnership, is where we really exchange and improve each other's work and learn from each other. Lubbert, any final words to you?
I found it very interesting to hear how the system is working in Nigeria, and I know there are many differences between Nigeria and the Netherlands, and we cannot compare it directly. But on headlines, we are working in the same way and in the same direction. And it's a pity that it's not possible to see in Nigeria how it's done. But you are welcome also from Nigeria when everything is again with Corona. There are no problems anymore, maybe. So it should be maybe interesting for you to visit our work in the Netherlands, and we can explain more, and you can see more than when we are talking with the screen. So you are welcome to look at how we are doing VCU testing, and I do not say that we are doing it in a correct way. It's also done in a way that it's cheap, and there's also, you can make many remarks on our way of working. Also, it's we are doing it in a way which is accepted in the Netherlands, and I think Nigeria has to do it in its own way. But some topics we can learn from each other.
Thank you. Very nice, very nice words. Thank you so much. I see a raised hands by Tony Okere. Let me quickly ask him and see if Dalele is still around.
All right. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Professor Lubert, thank you for
Go ahead, Tony.
Experience and insights from Netherlands. But a quick one here. I want to ask, what is the difference between the hobby breeders in Netherlands, okay, and the companies like Rico? How do they handle this issue of multi-locational trials as well as participatory plant selections? And
thank you very much, Tony. We have only 2 minutes left. I think this is a very technical that needs to explain the whole potato seed system and breeding system in the Netherlands. I'm happy that you can share that question, but I have to quit the call. So before I give maybe the floor to you and Lubert to talk about that after we finalize it. Dr. Sunday, I want to give the floor to you to close because also urgent other commitments here. And then basically close. And if people want to learn more about potatoes, if Lubert is willing to stay a little bit on board, you can answer the question.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. I think it has been a fruitful time learning together. And I'm also happy that all the people that matter in variety release processes in Nigeria are present in this room today. I want to salute their consistency, especially all the crop coordinators that are present today. Despite other contending engagements, they are here today. And since the collaborative seed program is a joint project between Netherlands and Nigeria, I think it is a good thing to hear from both sides and compare notes. This is exactly what we have done today. And I must say that I've learned from Lubert today, especially our coordinator should think about the history of the trial field, the homogeneity of the trial site, and also the influence of other things around the trial site, which probably some of us have not been taken into consideration. And as we progress in developing new innovations to improve the service delivery to the nation and farmers in particular, I pray for God's wisdom and courage to guide our bidders and companies adequately. And to our presenters, Professor Olufajo, Dr. Lubert, and Walter, we thank you for organizing this and for your time and energy. I thank you all the participants. We appreciate your presence in this meeting today. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Dr.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. So let's conclude this session. And basically, I give the floor to Lubert and Tony and any other people who are interested in the difference between the big company and hobby breeders in potato. It's an interesting case, but have a bit of time to talk about that. And for all of you, I really want to thank you for your presence also with the other people and look forward to meeting you at other occasions. Have a great evening. Bye-bye.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Bye.
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 Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye. Thanks.
If we do, bye. Bashir is speaking.
Yeah, Dr. Bashir.
Yeah.
Thanks for joining. So you eventually made it.
No, I just even the first presenter, I was there. I was part of the first presenter.
That's great.
Dr.
Thank you so much. Good afternoon.
Hello.
Good.
Yeah, thank you.
Dr.
Adenia. Who else? Professor Lakojo, good afternoon. Prof, Thank you,
Okay.
Professor Olufaje. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
That was very
Bye.
interesting.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
I think about the hobby breeders and
Yeah.
this. I think that in potatoes in the Netherlands, there are hobby breeders who are organized in one or two big companies. So Agrico and HZPC are companies who have their own breeding program, but they are also working together with hobby breeders who are doing selections on their own fields, and this hobby breeder is giving the variety to these companies, and these companies are commercializing the varieties. So the hobby breeders in the Netherlands in potatoes are working together with a big company. I
Okay.
think.
All right. Now going by the question with respect to Nigerian multilocational trials, especially having them on farmers' field. That was actually why I brought in the issue of hobby breeders, that the roles they play and how do we compare okay, their actions and activities in making the selections. Because
Yes.
I feel that in Netherlands, the breeding is more or less done by autonomous